to all of you to this wonderful celebration of a completion of a project that's been happening for 3 years without any of you knowing about it. And so we've been working away and enjoying the process. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a reading of the first page of this narrative, which is a prologue. The 150th anniversary of the Unitarian Society of Germantown was celebrated in 2015. In honor of that milestone, members of the Ending Racism Committee, ERC, decided to make an offering to the congregation. They proposed an interview of selected congregants and former or present ERC members on questions pertaining to race relations and systemic racism. The following 10 questions were constructed to give you a little background on the project. The first question was, what were the major issues in the community and the nation when you first came to USG? Second, what was the racial climate at USG when you first attended? Third, who were the major players? Fourth, what was your role? Fifth, what has changed over the years? Sixth is, how have you evolved? 7, looking forward, what changes would you propose or recommend? 8, thinking of UU's 7 principles, what has your involvement meant to you? 9, what changes do you see needing to happen in the future at USG? And what would be the role of ERC in these changes? 10, how have you evolved by being a member of USG ERC? Initially, the plan was to include people who were involved with ERC or anti-racism work at USG in some way. As it evolved, it also included several longtime members of USG. The people who gave permission to use their interviews and the date when they arrived at USG are as follows. Barbara Dowdle, this was in the 1950s, Barbara Dowdle came, Rosita Johnson, June Krebs, Jeff Smith, and Marion Wellington. And the Reverend at that time was Max Dassin. In the 1960s, Ingrid Brown joined the church, Fran Emery, Brene Graham, Dallas Graham, Louise Lisi, and Thomas Schoonmaker. And at that period, in the 1960s, Reverend David Park was our minister. In the 1980s, Hal Krieger joined the church, and Reverend Bill Gardner was the minister then. And lastly, on our list of people interviewed were Betty Hott Hankins and Marietta Tanner, and they joined in the 1990s when Reverend Nina Gray was with us.
Hello, everybody. This thing is always confused with me. Before I talk about the process, I want you to know that Kay and Mike have a bet going. And the bet is how many people will show for this. Kay said more than 30. Mike said less than 27. She wins. So the interviewing began early in July 2015, and we can't thank Jeff Smith enough for handling all of the The initial goal was to make all the interviews available online. Release forms were given out to the interviewees to sign. Out of the 17 who were interviewed, 14 signed the release forms. And then an attempt was made to extract all the answers to those 10 questions, but it turned out that some of the answers were diffuse and not always precise. So that was that was the biggest challenge in releasing the interviews. Most of the interviews are about an hour long, so you can imagine that's really long to sit and listen to 14 of them. And as Kay mentioned, I won't go through the whole thing. Various people have tried blogging. We have a list at the back: Nancy Anderson, Shobi, Gail, Jean Robinson, who's not here today, but Jean did some of it, Marietta Tanner, Kay Weiser, Susan Zigali-Bear, and then Lucinda and I came on board to continue with the work. So initially we met with the goal of creating a video that was an hour long, maybe, up to the 14, condense it down to, and then we realized this is such a huge challenge. So we narrowed the 10 questions down to 4 questions. What are the major issues in the community or the nation when you community and nation when you first came to USG? What was the racial climate at USG when you arrived? What has changed in your years of attending USG, and what future changes do you think need to happen? As we worked on it, we kept meeting for hours, and fairly early in the process we felt that we would go home, come back with whatever we had listened to, and our accounts were all different. 3 people heard 3 different things. What we did not hear was also different, and that was important too. So then we decided we're just going to meet, hunker down, eat lunch in the middle, and just work on it, listen to everything very carefully over and over and over again. It was so tedious. The same things. Okay, do we stop here? Do we take this? And then the plan also changed from creating a CD to making a narrative. That way, if somebody did not, so if you see that somebody is not included in a certain question, it's because we did not get that answer from them. It's fairly straightforward in that sense. Personally, for me, this was a huge learning experience. As I kept working on it, I realized that my major goal in this was to make sure that the voices of the people of color in the interviews did not get lost along the way. That was my only goal. I realized as I kept working on it that I didn't care about the format. I didn't care about anything except that. However, the format is great, I think, even if I say so myself. So the blue binders will be on the ERC lending table for you to check out. For those who do not get a copy today, please sign your name, your contact information. It will also be available online. It's a PDF, not very long. I want to introduce the interviewees. Oh, the other looks like this, so please don't.
So I just wanted to share a few thoughts from my experience of helping to compose the narrative. It was really an interesting and eye-opening journey of discovery for me, and provided an opportunity to reflect on 7 decades of systemic racism in our country, and to sadly realize how much work there still is to be done. Hearing the stories of the interviewees, especially the people of color, has made me acutely aware of my white privilege and how this has shielded me, and to this day provides me with unfair advantages not readily available to people of color. I also learned a lot about the history of USG. I'm a relative newcomer. I joined in 2012, and almost everyone else involved involved in this project has had 20 to 70 years of interaction with this church. So that's a lot of history. It was informative to learn about the ministers who have served through the years and the various ways that members have helped create more community outreach. The interviewees revealed some ways they believe the church has grown over time, and they suggest many ways that we might explore going forward to become more actively engaged with the broader community. As a congregation, we can continue to learn, become more sensitive and responsive to people of color everywhere. Many interviewees spoke of the importance of reflecting more deeply about our UU principles, the 7 principles, and exploring ways to more actively engage with them. We think about them, we agree with them, and then sometimes we don't really say how we put that to action in the world. And by doing more of that, we could all inspire each other to continue to grow and evolve and create positive change. And most importantly, we could work more purposefully toward ending racism in our society and our Unitarian Universalist denomination. So, Parvothy's going to introduce the interviewee.
So, of the 14 people who were interviewed and signed the release forms, some of them are here. As you all know, June is no longer with us, June Krebs, sadly. Marietta Tanner couldn't make it today. Marion Washington could not make it. So we have Dallas Graham. No, Ingrid also could not make it today. So today in the front row we have the rest of the interviewees. We have Dallas Graham. If you want to.
Both sides of the candle.
Really, I can't wait for this to be over. I apologize, Jeff. I can't believe I said I did not include you, but Jeff normally is an interviewee. He's the only one who attended all the interviews because he did the videography. Thank you.
interviewers. The people who, no, we did the interviewees.
Could you use the microphone?
I certainly could.
Hard to hear.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. So the interviewers were Nancy Anderson, Shobi Khanna, Gail Mershon, Jeannie Robinson, who is not here, I believe, Kay Weiser, Susan Zingali-Baird, Marietta Tanner. And we want to give a thank you to Siddharth Menon, who was formatting the photographs. And another thank you for Jeff, because he was our videographer and an interviewee and present at every interview, of course. And he did a fabulous job. So thank you, Jeff. Now I believe Kent is going to share a few words.
Can't talk.
I can't emphasize he's the minister here.
You sure?
I want to lend my thanks to everybody who worked so hard to make this critical project happen. And you know, it was the 150th anniversary when we were really digging deep and reflecting on where we've been and where we want to go. And we know that you know, Dr. King said Sunday morning is the most segregated time in America. It was true way before he said it, and it's still very, very true. It's a very powerful, painful reality of our nation. And so we said, you know, this church had people who started trying to chip away at that and make it change, because we knew that spiritually, as human beings, we wanted to be together around values and celebrating life and all that is good and doing good in the world. And so I just really want to thank all the people who share their testimonials on camera. The courage and strength that you brought to the church is invaluable. I believe very strongly this is a special church that makes many mistakes every day. And so, you know, we can't have any chance of doing our best going forward unless we learn where we've been and what we've done, the good and the bad, the blessings and the pains that have been caused. So all of you are mentors to me. I came here as a little puppy dog. Gal's on the search committee that gave me a chance. And anyway, I could speak for hours about how all of you have taught me to be a minister and a person. And I can't overexpress that. And I hope folks will have a chance to keep going through these materials and finding out how we can all keep learning to be the best people and the best church we can be going forward.
We'd like to have a few words from a couple of the people who were interviewed. We'll start with Bernays. While Bernays getting started, it was a personal honor for me to listen to 13 people be so vulnerable and so direct and honest in their answers to all the questions. Sometimes when I can't sleep at night, I can repeat every single thing practically they said, because we listened to every single one of them so many times. Okay, thank you, Bernays.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
As you know, my name is Renee Graham. I'm not well known. But anyway, when I first visited church, when I first visited the church, Dave was here, and I really liked him. My husband had tried to get me to come, and I said no. So, and then when I did, I said, well, he's trying all right. But I was very taken with everybody, with everybody. And at that time, there was a lot of African Americans. It was well represented, I thought. And then things really changed when Dave left. And I said, well, I don't want to come to this church anymore. And then
Renee, did you
yes,
say for people who might not know who Dave was?
Dave was the minister, the
Last name.
last minute, the minister of the church when I first came, Dave Park. He spoke Sunday before last, and he was a very wonderful person because he was trying to get the church to change and to accept different nationalities. And I don't know too much about that, but my husband does. George Kidd, also I remember he became president of the board, which really made me feel good. And the reason why I decided to really become a member and to work hard was because of Gertrude Moore and Harry Moore, because Gertrude kept telling my husband's, we'll get her, don't worry, she'll come. And then the thing that really made me stay was I wanted to be involved with the youth, and Hal Krieger and I thought it was horrible that we did not have a youth group. And Hal and I decided that we were going to start our youth group, and that was in the 60s?
No, it was 90s.
90s, I'm sorry. In the
I wasn't
90s.
even born in the 60s.
Hal and I went to the three Unitarian churches that were not far from us, and asked them to ask their youth if they would like to have our RUU, and of course, it grew and grew, and we've been involved with a lot of the young people that are here today that have children of their own. So, out of our work with the group, we got 3 ministers to be proud of. So, that's it.
Thank you.
And since Jeff Smith attended and videoed every single interview, we'd like him to share a few words about his experience.
Thank you, Kay. My daughter came, and her husband came here to hear me speak. I guess that happens so rarely these days. Anyway, I had to chuckle when Parvothy was describing the efforts that they and the sufferings they went through trying to produce this report. When they approached me in 2015, I think Kay came after a search service where I had just reported the service and said, oh, we were working on a project. We're wondering if you would like to take part in it. And I said, sure, what are you thinking of? Oh, just a little documentary on the history of racism, or from maybe 1960 to the present. Or we really want to ask them some questions, and then we want to put this all together into maybe I don't know, half an hour or an hour. So my basic response was, okay. And even right then, I said to her, you know, I will record them, and I will help you do all the other parts, but I'm not committing right here at church to do the planning and the editing and the post-production, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm happy to see that a result came out of the interviews. I'm happy that I'm very impressed that Barbara Dowdell found someone who agreed to cull through the logged interviews. Did he come up with some?
I just spoken to him.
Okay. Well, it was truly, when I told the committee that they were going to have to take all these 13 interviews, and they were going to have to sit down and watch them with a notepad, and for each question that they proposed, they were going to have to log at what point in the interview, like from minute to minute, those responses took place, so that someone could go back and find all those things they weren't sounding. So, but they did all that, which is truly impressive, and Barbara found someone who agreed to edit them, and maybe
He was
it has.
Paul Joslo was a public school parent whose child I have taught, and then he...
And here's your Barbara.
Yeah, that was Paul Joslo. He was a public school parent. His son was in a class that I taught, and then he helped do a video history of Girls High that had some of our church members in it, including Louise and her mom. So he showed an interest in the history of important things in Philadelphia.
And not knowing what he was getting into, he agreed to take it.
But it did not pan out.
Okay, we don't have any
No.
good things. Yeah. When you have volunteer help, you have to settle with what you get. Anyway, I just wanted to, I have to laugh at being even included in this project because I believe that, was it, I forget who was interviewing whom, but I was videotaping it and the interviewer turned around and said, "Oh, is anybody interviewing you?" I said, "No, I wasn't actually on the calendar." "Well, you're just going to have to sit in that chair." And that's how I got interviewed. I don't know if I was part of the plan, but it did make me think a lot. When I grew up in the church, as I mentioned with my kids, I was probably on the, not probably, in 1960 I would have voted for Richard Nixon.
I did. I did.
Okay. And Barbara was definitely for Kennedy. But I didn't have a good reason for being for Nixon, because he wasn't a crook yet. So,
But I still have the Nixon pin you gave.
in any case, I'm just kind of giving a framework of where I came from. I think I had a Republican father and a Democratic mother. My mother was always very committed to social issues. She was at the Germantown YWCA in 1948 as the featured white woman, but it was still the activities of the woman being out of the house, the housewife doing something more than being in the house. My father was in real estate, and he was pretty much, I think, a Republican businessman. He mentored most of the people on my nearly all-black track team that I ran on. He was a track athlete in college. So I have a kind of mixture of being in a white family and just kind of coming to grips with this was a white church too. And then just jumping to another random thought that I had, one of the problems I came to see when we're reaching out to the populations of color, particularly, let's say, African Americans who have a Christian background, how do we get them interested or come to a church like USG, and yeah, I guess especially then, but even now, when our culture is different. My kids went to Sunday school, you could say, or their youth group was at Fumcog. Fumcog is today, they're a sanctuary church. Fumcog is a very involved and well-integrated church, I think. I haven't been there for a while, I'm sure it's well-integrated. They share the bond of Christianity. That's how I see it. It makes it easier for a person who has a particular faith to go to where the people are. And since USG, or the Unitarian Universalist concept, doesn't involve Christianity, I've been always wondering, is that one of our problems? But anyways, I'm happy to see that we have drawn and we continue to draw younger people who mixed marriages or whatever race or color they're interested in how we believe. So anyway, I learned a lot from the interviews. And another anecdote I will tell is with Betty, we sat down for the interview, and I don't know, I was having a hard time getting, light, because I was having a hard time seeing her eyes with the camera, and I asked her, gee, would you take off your hat so I can see your face? And she did. And it was so uncomfortable, I could soon see that was not a good idea. So she put her hat back on, and we went on with the interview, and I made the technical aspects of these interviews was fun. So I enjoyed the opportunity to do the project. Thank you.
So we made some copies of the booklet. For the interviewees. Well, this is a different order, so let's go. Okay, Barbara Dowd. Fran Emery. Bonet Graham. Dallas Graham. Betty Hankins. Rosita Johnson. Hal Krieger. Louise Lisi. Tom Schoonmaker. Jeff Smith. Kent. Guys. We also have a copy to go into the archives. And the ERC decided that we would like to give a copy as a gift to Connie Simon in Cincinnati, and also a copy to Mark Morrison Reed because he collects data on these issues. So he's getting one. Now that that's over with, this is the blue binder that's going to be on the ERC table. We have a notebook for you to sign your, give your name and contact information, and you can borrow it. It will also be available online as a PDF. Jeff, sorry again. I can't believe I forgot you. That you were one of the interviewees.
Oh, yeah. It was a surprise.
After that many meetings and that many hours.
Harvey, is there an opportunity to buy them later? What happened with that?
There will be, we started a sign-up list for that.
And what's the price?
That depends. If you want one of those fiber-bound copies, it's $8.50. $8.50 each. It's $5. So.
Since some of all the interviews will be online, I really encourage you to go on our website and look for them. I mean, don't binge on them over the weekend, but they really are wonderful to view.
And where, are they gonna be, I would suggest putting them in a separate file on the webpage.
Okay,
Because otherwise, where do I find them otherwise?
technical, we'll put it in the communicator how to get to it, because right now I'm not sure. Okay, and that is a certain segue, because we're gonna have questions and answers. So, I see Dennis first.
My question was simply, are the interviews, the videos going to be online, or the transcript that you created? The transcript.
Oh, the actual interviews will not? Oh, my mistake.
What?
Okay, well,
No.
sometime when you can't sleep at night, call me and I can
Okay.
tell you word for word what everybody said.
Okay. What did you say, the interviews would not be online?
There's a mix-up, I'm not sure.
We all signed, I for one, signed a release.
Everyone
So
did.
well, then if they signed a release, that was so that it could be online. So there's no, in my view, having done all that work, there's no reason they should not be publicly available.
We will definitely let you know. Stay tuned.
I think it's important because I think we could even promote this outside the USG congregation, their website, in terms of what people thought or think.
But as Jeff said, we do have the video release forms. We have all of them signed. So anyway, are there any other questions?
Did you show the videos in church yet? You know,
No.
I'd like to see it.
You won't want to watch them in church.
They're long.
They range from 40 minutes to an hour, and if you're going to engage in that time, you've got to be part of the interview, basically. You've got to spend your time just at your house and watch what you can, but to see it in church would not be fun, I don't think.
Go ahead, Louise.
But what you were talking about putting online was what you put together,
No,
the
both,
DVD.
both.
No, there is no DVD.
There's the video.
What is it
There's
you're
this.
editing?
Okay, there's no DVD. The editing, which is technically called logging the interviews, is what Jeff explained. We had to listen, and some other people helped us with this at the beginning. We had to listen and record the number where the statements were made, so we could go back to it. So that's what that is, but there's no DVD. There are interviews, live interviews of everyone answering the questions, but there's no DVD of a compilation of the questions.
Kent and then Gail.
I'm wondering if it's possible for someone to read some of these quotes, because this is so rich. Could we take a few moments to have somebody, including maybe the people who shared their testimony themselves, just to read a couple of the things that they shared in their own words? Just this transcript, because it's so valuable. I loved it, but I don't know what the time allocation is or what the openness is. For me, that's so rich.
We do have time, but since they just got the copy in their hands, let's give them a few minutes.
They haven't seen this before.
Right. But it's
Look
been
up your
3 years,
names,
Kent.
people.
Yeah.
See what you like. See what you want to remember.
Let me clarify, because it seems a lot of people are rightfully confused because it was such a long process. We thought we were going to create a video. It very early became obvious that that was impossible to create a video out of 14-hour-long interviews, rambling interviews of 10 questions. We needed to coherently pull out some essential nuggets of shared experience about, and that's why we narrowed it down to the 4 questions, and then we got the people's responses regarding those questions, and that's what we had to hunt through the interviews, because the interviews weren't all flowing smoothly. People didn't necessarily stay and just talk about one question. They got rambling or thinking of another memory, and they'd go there. So we were having to go in and find go for each question and find out what everything that Louise said about that question was, and then put it all, everything Tom said regarding that question, everything, and then find a way to coherently present that. And it seems that it would be much easier done in a narrative, because we couldn't be blipping through, make a video out of little bits of people speaking here, there, and the other place. So that's how this got developed. So these are probably a booklet here is equivalent to maybe, I don't know, an hour's worth max of shared experiences that are gleaned from the interviews. So if the interviews are to be made available online, you would be able to say, okay, I'm going to listen to Rosita's interview and go online and hear all the questions she was asked and her response to everything and get hers, and then you could go and listen to Barbara's or whatever. But that will take you 14 hours, and that's fine. But that's why there's no video if there was a confusion about it.
Okay, part of the reason we don't have a video is, like Jeff said, we had identified a person, but it became very clear very quickly that ERC simply did not have the budget to pay somebody to do that. So it's not impossible. It's quite possible. We just don't have the money. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Yeah, go ahead, Gail.
Yeah, thank you. It was, I was really going to ask a question that I was hoping was going to clarify that. Do I need a mic?
No, you
No,
don't.
just so I appreciate this very much, and I just want to say that I think that having this, if you want to go and sit through the interviews, why not, if we can make them accessible, but it would be 14 hours of listening. So I think having this in the booklet is such a treasure, because this represents the culling of those interviews with a very dedicated, thoughtful process to hone in on the racial situation at USG over time by people who know it, who lived it, and who contributed to so much to this congregation. So this is a real treasure you have in your hands, and it's better than in an interview. That's just what I want to say.
This young lady.
I could just be patient and wait and read this, but I'll ask instead. I think you said once you went from 10 questions to 4 questions, the 4th question was something about, like what would you like to see prioritized or focused on or change, and I'm wondering if there were anything that came up in a lot of interviews or something that was particularly surprising or hopeful to the committee, or just any takeaways from that last one.
Moral of the book.
So having forgotten Jeff in this whole thing, I'm not depending on my memory right now. It's a wide spectrum on that. A lot of suggestions were given as to what we can do, changing the music, and that keeps coming up a lot. If you have heard discussions about what we can do to make USG more diverse, changing the music. Okay. So there's one person who says, excited by activism at USG, especially that ERC is working on fighting mass incarceration, and there are opportunities to discuss and act on. Do more outreach. That came up a lot throughout the interviews, that we are not involved enough with the local communities here.
Lucinda, would you let Parvothy speak, please?
I'm not reading the names because the question was not who said what, rather it was what were the suggestions. More cultural events will draw people from the area. Again, this goes back to how can we get people from the community to come over. Jazz concerts, multicultural events, start gatherings, conversations like the coffee and conversation that used to happen on Sunday mornings. 7 principles, reflect on them. Are we going through the motions or are we living the 7 principles? Have more adult spiritual development offerings. This was very interesting, trying not to make an appeal to people of color to join USG. Did you want to say something, Zachary?
Well, Kent was asking if there was anything that, we might want to read or whatever. Marion Wallington, in her absence, a friend of mine who I've talked to a lot, she did say, in relation to the 7 principles, it's like we go through the motions and we don't apply them. And specifically, she said, what I hear every once in a while is an effort to appeal to people of color. And I find that offensive. I feel the church should do whatever they want to do, but don't go and try to manipulate me to come and join your church. I get a little annoyed with that from time to time. We need to serve the community and not just the congregation.
Right. Then there were suggestions to make more of an effort after the service to greet and talk to those who are new on Sunday mornings. A few people said, just keep doing what we're doing, keep going in the direction, continue the ERC work, canning work. We don't do enough to incorporate children. There was a suggestion to have more children's programming in the church, open the church up to the neighborhood. That, like I said, kept coming up over and over again. Invite African Americans and Hispanic speakers to come to the church. Hold once a month luncheons for the local community and invite everybody. Have a commercial. You commercial. There was also one person who said, I would absolutely, I would propose absolutely no changes. Everything is fine. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, I have to say this. So the last one is, get involved in the ending racism committee. So as co-chair, I'm not pitching this, I'm actually reading it. Yes.
I have my $5 in my pocket, I bought one now, but when can we get the general membership, get copies of this really wonderful document you put together?
We'll take names. There's a notebook there. You can put your names down.
If you want to get one.
Yeah, we'll order as many as names we have.
I can make those for nothing. I'll make 20 copies, I'll bind them.
That would be great. Thank you, Eric. Who goes first? Nancy goes first. Jeff.
One more thing for anybody who's in the audience who doesn't know, there is one interview that is available online now, as far as I know, and that's Marion Watlington's.
Marion's interview is already online, and it has been for a month.
And how would people?
Just go to the ERC webpage, you'll see the interview. It's a YouTube.
Okay.
So the community.
Yes, Jeff. Yeah, the communicator has a link, so you must have received it in your email. Yes, Jeff.
So I recommend highly Marion's interview, by the way. I just looked at it the other day when I heard this was happening. And in fact, all of the interviews are very revealing of the personalities of the individuals. If you don't know who they are and you want to know more about them, they're a great opportunity to get to know them. And you will think after having watched them. But I also, and I hope this is okay, there's at least two people I can think of who are not pictured here. Bob Williford and Lynn Kalish.
They did not want.
I understand they did not give permission for their interviews to be used. However, they did agree to be interviewed, and those interviews do exist and are unpublished as opposed to published. And I think that's important because if you haven't, I saw Lynn Kalish's interview, and it was a good perspective on what her life was like growing up in Elkins Park, for example. And Bob Williford, I don't know why he doesn't give permission for it to be used, but maybe they'll agree to it sometime in the future, or ask them what their thoughts were. Anyway, I just wanted to acknowledge at least are there any others that? Okay. Yeah, because they were all involved in, and I think it's an omission. Unless they're embarrassed by it, I think it's an omission not to include them as being part of the project.
Well, I was going to say, it's a little intimidating to think people can go look at the interview. I wanted to clarify, I did not officially join this church until 2006, but we went back and forth about when did I first know the church and when did I first come. It was 1963. As I grew up, near 26 in Girard, and attended the First Unitarian Church on Chestnut Street, so that I knew you all my life. I really had so much wish that my mother could have been in these interviews, because she had such a much better grasp, a much better verbal ability than I have to discuss the situations. And what Barbara Daddle discussed, that you can see on the video of Girls High, was the senior class trip to Washington. She said, where are these other people? And she found out they were in a different hotel because the hotels were segregated. She was just so horrified. I know that was the beginning of a lot of her activism. And when I mentioned unionism, it was like in the 30s, really, when my parents were both at UPenn. They got to know people who were working in the cafeteria and cleaning staff, and were just horrified when they learned about their conditions and their salaries, and they became very, big supporters of unionism. And it was more in the 30s, not in the 60s. It comes out sounding like it's in the 60s in this transcript. But I was, as I said there, I was very involved with knowing about. I knew that there were lunch boycotts, and I went every Saturday as a high school student to pick it outside of Woolworths, because I was about the lunch boycotts, trying to have a national boycott to support desegregating the lunch counters. And I gotta say one thing about the march, Martin Luther King's march. I went on a bus, one of many, many buses that went from Philadelphia to the march. And that was before all the major superhighways were in Washington, so buses went down, I think it was New York Avenue. You were going through the city, and just on the way to the march, those buses going through the city, the streets were lined with people everywhere, waving at the buses, and I just remember that so powerfully.
You asked about what we learned doing this. For me, it's very poignant that we have an actual video of June Krebs, because she was an activist practically all her life, and she passed away about a year ago. So the treasure is we have a video of her, and some of her memory wasn't quite as accurate as it could have been maybe 10 years ago, but still, it's a real treasure to have that. So, more questions?
I think we need to remember, I'm 82 years old, I was raised at 7. I think we need to remember, this is America. And one of the things that she has done is to program each and every one of us, black, white, whatever, in terms of racism. It is not something that, you know, in our church that you sit down and take, you know. But let me tell you, racism is alive and doing well in America. You have but to look what is currently going on. People ask, why do we have this president? We have this president to wake us up to the reality of the work that still has to be done. And he can do it on an individual basis in our neighborhoods, as we walk along in wherever we may go. It's the way you relate to other human beings, and understand this very clearly. Each and every one of us come from the same source, regardless of gender or culture or whatever. We human beings stem from the same source. When I looked at that woman out there in California saying, I have lost everything, I didn't lose everything, but I felt her pain because she's a human being. Now, our work here at USG is, what shall I call it? I think it is positive in that we are becoming aware of what needs to be done and how we need to relate to each other. And as we do that, because you see, you can't go out to the black community and say, here, over here. Right. Because they need to be taught and explained to. You are a human being. I don't think our children understand that. Every morning, every night, there's 2 or 3 of them shooting each other as if they're dogs. And it hurts me to the core. It was not that way when I was a child. There was segregation, there were lynchings. But we blacks understood. We have to hang together. We have to be together. We have to share. This generation doesn't seem to recognize the sacrifices that have been made and the sacrifices that must still be made. I commend us here for being aware, because I think that's a good beginning. That's a good beginning. And I try not to say anything because it's strenuous for me today. But we are beginning. The work is much work to be done on all levels, black, white, Asian. Notice our commercials. They have changed since our president has taken his. They are beautiful now. Take a look at them. They are more diverse. Yes. Something said to me, look, Hankins, this is different. Yes, they're diverse. You see Asians, you see blacks, whites, you see the kids. I said, these people are trying to say something to our president. That's right. And that's what we need to do on a daily basis. No overwhelming stuff. Just treat people, old, young, black, transgender, treat them the way we would like to be treated.
Thank you.
And as for our church, anyone that will come to me and say, what can I do to be more appreciative of the people of color? How can I better myself? And I will have a long conversation with you on what you see that you need to see that you're not there yet to know what you say or do to hurt people of color's feelings. And I think that's my job, to help. And it's their job to help me to see and understand what I'm doing to help the people that I come in contact with that is different from me.
people in this audience already know that I initially got involved here at USG because I saw a note that said that there was an ending racism committee, and I was welcome to come. That's why I'm here, and that's why I stayed. And I think what I'm asking of all of us is to create a climate here where we can make mistakes. Okay? We can mix people up. Okay? So we have to put pressure on ourselves to get everything exactly right. If we are taking our first steps out into a world, into an America that is racist. But we can do that here at USG. And people aren't going to jump on us because we want to learn. And it hurts sometimes to learn. And that's okay that it hurts. But give us a ground, a space to continue to be able to, to learn and to make mistakes. Because I see it so often now, all of a sudden in our culture, a person will make a mistake and then they get really pressed down, really far down. And are they ever going to get back up? Are they really ever going to get back up and try again to work at their racism? To be able to say, I am racist. I have had racist thoughts. I have done things that make me uncomfortable. I want to learn. I want to change. And I want someplace that I can go and talk to. It's like AA. Okay, there's a place you can go to talk to about being an alcoholic, because you don't want to be an alcoholic, but where can you go to talk about your racism? If you're white in America, in a racist culture, you need a place to go to that is safe. And that's what USG has been for me. But I feel USG can do better. So we can do better.
Andrea? I'm loud enough, I don't even like the credit. I really, really appreciate what people have had to say, and I really appreciate the work that's been done, and all of you have heard my speech before, but I think I get a little bit offended when people say, and often people will come up, like other people will come up, particularly African Americans, oh, I want to see more black people here. Well, I don't necessarily want to see that. And I will tell you why. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? People will come up to me and say, I want to see more black people here. I don't want to see that. I don't. Because you assume that because people look a certain way, they are a certain way. No. I want people who think like me, not people who look like me. And I will give you an example of that. I have been to hundreds of black churches. Tons of them have. Every church I've gone to has a building fund, not one has a bail fund. So I want people who are working on mass incarceration, who are working at the border. I want people like that, and they will come in all colors. And so I think that that's the goal for me. And I appreciate this work, but I really, it hurts me because I'm like, well, if you're black, that means you're like one thing. I'm not one thing, and I'm also foreign, so actually I see all of you do things to each other that in my world just never gets done. Because we don't necessarily see each other as that. But there's something far more important that I want to tell you. And if you are recording, could you just turn that off for a second?